Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is likely to announce for president tonight, alongside Elon Musk. Russia and China draw closer to one another in the G7 summit, and Sweden becomes a European country with some of the highest gun violence rates. We are going to be discussing why and how that has occurred. This is the noteworthy news that you need to know for today, Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. But first, please hit the subscribe button down below, and also be sure to follow me at Julie R. Hartman on Instagram and Twitter. And if you are so inclined, check out my show Timeless, in which I discuss timeless, eternal subjects. This is, of course, the timely or news component of that show. First off, the moment that many Americans have been waiting for. Well, it might be coming sooner than you might think. By soon, I mean like in the next hour. Apparently, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is considering announcing his candidacy for president tonight. He is expected to file paperwork with the Federal Election Commission today to make his bid official. So why do we think it's today? Well, Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter, the founder of Tesla and SpaceX, actually tweeted earlier this week that he is interviewing the Florida governor tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern on Twitter Spaces. Twitter Spaces is an online platform that Mr. Musk is launching. And Mr. Musk has promised that there will be, quote, a major announcement. Now, it could be a new Twitter headquarters, but it could also be that Governor DeSantis is finally throwing his hat in the ring. Now, Elon Musk is hosting this event, many speculate, because he may be a supporter of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Certainly, Elon Musk is a supporter of Republicans. He once was a Democrat, but he has come out and said that he has started voting Republican, though he has not specifically commented about his support for either Trump or DeSantis. But more likely is that Musk wants to be at the forefront of the presidential debate cycle. In fact, he said he wants Twitter to be a, quote, a place where all voices are heard, where there's a kind of dynamic of interaction that you don't see anywhere else. You know, it's an interesting presidential election right now in history. Of course, every presidential election is interesting and different from the last one. But what we are seeing now is that both the Democrat National Committee and the Republican National Committee have not put out any plans for primary debates. Now, President Trump has indicated that he will not engage in certain debates if they are going to be administered by the Joint Bipartisan Debate Commission, which since the 80s has done presidential debates. This is because President Trump has said that the questions are, quote, rigged against him, and that he does not get enough time compared to his Democrat counterparts, and that the questions are positioned in a way so as to make President Trump look bad. So President Trump has indicated that he may not want to debate, but also the Democratic National Committee, much to the dislike of RFK Jr., who is a Democrat candidate for president, has not set any debate schedule for their debates. So it appears that Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter, someone who wants to make Twitter a place where all voices are heard, it seems like he wants to step in here and maybe make Twitter a forum for presidential debates. We are really at a pivotal moment in history where we are witnessing technology and the way things are done in elections change before our very eyes. It is exciting but daunting. According to a CNN poll, President Trump does lead Governor DeSantis by a large margin, actually, 53% to DeSantis's 26%. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has been a great governor of Florida, according to many. Many point to his Don't Say Gay law, which in fact is a misnomer because nowhere in the law does he mandate that teachers cannot say gay. Actually, it's called the Parental Authority Act, and it is seeking to uproot homosexual, transsexual, and heterosexual gender and sex conversations in Florida public schools for those who are under third grade. Because, you know, children deserve to have their innocence protected. Also, Governor DeSantis was one of the few governors in the union that held firm on not locking down his state amidst the COVID lockdowns, which otherwise ran rampant in the country. Additionally, Ron DeSantis recently has gained a lot of points, if you will, among conservatives for reforming an AP African American history course to get rid of critical race theory, intersectionality, and Black queer studies from that course and replace it with some more legitimate, less political, hard facts about the contributions of African Americans in this country. Ron DeSantis has also cut taxes. Florida is one of the states with the lowest both property and income tax rates. And most recently, Governor DeSantis sent about $100 million in aid to the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, in order to help with the border crisis that is going on with low border enforcement. Actually, part of this aid not only includes Floridian military personnel, but also planes and helicopters and boats and other weapon equipment. Despite these strengths of Governor DeSantis, some say that he seems more like a competent boardroom executive than maybe a president of the United States. In other words, does he have the charisma? Does he have even the interpersonal strength that needs to be conveyed when you're going to the 38th parallel, for instance, and meeting with the dictator of North Korea? That's one of the downsides people see with Governor DeSantis. Now, President Trump, his track record of his presidency speaks for itself. Many point to the fact that he eliminated ISIS within his first year of the presidency. He established the Abraham Accords, which was a landmark thawing of relations with Israel and its neighboring Arab states. President Trump also stood up to China, conducting military exercises in the South China Sea, froze the assets of certain Chinese nationals that were in the United States, which were the people who were behind the brutal massacres of Uyghurs. Many, like President Trump's tough on crime approach, though of course they point to the COVID lockdowns that he in large part initiated in January 6th and the election drama of 2020 as a knock against him. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens between these two, if it even is true that Governor DeSantis is announcing. But I have a feeling that the next time we speak, we will have a new Republican candidate in the race. Now on to our next story. This past weekend in Japan, there was the G7 summit, which is a group of 7, that's what the G stands for, 7 governments, which come together to talk about world affairs. The United States, headed by President Biden, was in attendance, though President Biden did leave early on Sunday in order to come back to the United States to resume debt ceiling talks with the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, although sadly it appears that they have not made headway on that matter. But what's important to note about the G7 summit isn't so much what was agreed to there, but how Russia and China are taking the summit. Now, the group of 7 were primarily Western democratic countries, which pledged more support to Ukraine, including President Biden has agreed to send tens of millions more in US dollars to arms guarantees to Ukraine. And also, these group of Western countries agreed to challenge China's claims to the South China Sea. Now, as a counterpart to the G7 summit, both Moscow and Beijing are going to meet several times over the next week to have both economic and security talks. For instance, the head of security of the Chinese Communist Party went to Russia this past Sunday in order to initiate a talk with Russia's head of security council in Moscow. Additionally, business tycoons from China and the Prime Minister of Russia are holding trade talks, talking about expanding cooperation in transportation, energy, and agriculture. The Prime Minister of Russia recently referred to China as, quote, Russia's big friend. Now, Beijing here is trying to get in the middle of world affairs. Beijing, i.e. China, initiated a very historic peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, thawing relations between those historically adversarial countries. Also, China is trying to be the leader of the peace deal with the Ukraine-Russia war. Actually, back in December, Beijing sent a 12-point plan to President Biden and other leaders of Western countries proposing an end to a war, which those Western countries, including our own, rejected because it was seen as too accommodating to Russia's interest. Now, the CCP has said that in the aftermath of these G7 talks, that the U.S. is trying to, quote, replicate the Ukraine crisis in Asia. Essentially, China is trying to accuse the United States of creating what they call a proxy war with China, with another country. They're arguing that the United States is fighting a proxy war with Russia in Ukraine. So China is alleging that this proxy war will be fought in Taiwan, where Taiwan may be the battleground between the U.S. and China over their interests. The point is, though, China really, over the past few months, have been stepping up the ante with regard to their rhetoric, painting the United States as not a collaborator, or as better put, someone with whom they could have good relations, but someone who is a staunch adversary and some country that they want to undermine. Additionally, China has taken aim at Japan, which hosted the G7 summit. Japan is an ally of the United States. China has said that Japan is, quote, doing the United States bidding, and that Japan is amping up the China threat in order to rebuild their constitution that had historic arms limitations after World War II. You may recall that the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, was assassinated a few months ago. Many believe that China might have been behind that assassination because Shinzo Abe wanted to remilitarize Japan. As indicated, part of the peace deal in the wake of World War II was that Japan had to demilitarize itself. Japan is trying to reverse that trend, and China is taking great umbrage to that. So we're seeing ever more with each day, with each new meeting, these divisions between the United States, Western bloc and its allies, and the China-Russia bloc and its allies are becoming more cemented. Now, on to the final news story of the day. There was a stunning report in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that Sweden has become one of the top European countries as far as gun violence incidents. According to the Wall Street Journal, quote, a wave of gang violence has turned Sweden, usually known as a peaceful welfare state, into a gun homicide hotspot in Europe. Sweden's gun violence rate is approximately 2.5 times the European average, and it is 30 times higher per capita than London's. So what is going on here? Well, immigration. People don't like to talk about it, but it's the truth. Over the past 10 years, many individuals from Muslim-majority countries have immigrated to Europe. The number is as high as 25 million. In 2016, according to the Pew Research Center, 5% of Europe's population was Muslim. Now that number is as high as 15%, according to some data. Pew has not updated its numbers up into 2023. One of the gangs behind the bout of violence that has plagued Sweden in recent weeks is called the Kurdish Fox Group. It is headed by an individual, a Kurd, who fled Iraq in the 1980s under the dictatorial rule of Saddam Hussein. He and his mother gained citizenship in Sweden. Now, in the 2022 election, the Sweden Democrats, which is the anti-immigration party, gained 20% of the vote. It became the second largest party in the Swedish parliament. Similar trends have happened in Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and Italy, which has also witnessed large-scale Muslim immigration. If you look at the United States immigration problem, as difficult as it is, a lot of the immigrants that the United States get is coming just geographically from countries that are overwhelmingly Catholic or Christian. So even though migrants that are coming to the United States may not speak English or in some ways may not be compatible with some American ways of life or culture, compatible, I mean comfortable, at least those individuals are from Catholic countries and sort of are more easily able to assimilate in the United States. This is different with regard to Europe. A lot of the immigrants, again, because of geography, are coming from Muslim majority countries, and it makes it a lot harder for those Muslim immigrants to assimilate into European society, and it has led to a lot of violence, a lot of strife, a lot of disagreement. Interestingly, the very liberal country of Denmark, which has been quite open with its immigration policies, recently reversed that policy. The Prime Minister of Denmark, in a stunning admission last year, said that they will no longer be taking in undocumented immigrants, specifically Muslim immigrants, because of the assimilation and the violence problem Of course, I'm not trying to imply that all Muslim immigrants that go into these countries are violent. That is certainly not the case, though we cannot deny the data, which shows, as with the case of Sweden, that violence has gone up as far as certain militant groups. Now, Sweden wants to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Turkey, which I recently did a history episode on called Talkin' Turkey, you should watch it, has blocked Sweden's admission to NATO, saying that Sweden has been too kind to the Kurds. The Kurds are an ethnic group which lived in Turkey. They actually wanted their own country when the Ottoman Empire fell, and Turkey didn't allow that. So Turks and Kurds have historically been on the outs. Additionally, Turkey has said that Sweden has not allowed extraditing Turkish citizens. So maybe if Sweden joined NATO, they would have more support as far as enacting immigration reforms to quell this uptick in violence. But unfortunately, right now, that does not look to be likely. Thank you very much for joining me today. A reminder to hit the subscribe button down below and follow me at Julie R. Hartman, and check out, of course, my show Timeless. Take care. See you soon.